Today we have a recap on American psychological horror movie, Smile. Let's begin. In the beginning of the movie, we see a girl who discovered a dead body of a lady. Scene shifts and we see a psychiatrist, Miss Rose, who was dreaming all this in her chambers. Her phone rang. It's a call from her patient Curl and she goes to meet him. Curl keeps on blabbering that all will die. Rose tries to console him by saying that she won't let anything happen to him or anyone, and keeps Curl under her direct observation. We see a PhD student, Laura, who was acting weird. Last week she saw her college professor Gabriel hitting himself with a hammer till he died. Laura was a sole witness who saw her professor commit suicide. After that incident, it seemed like she was going insane. Rose goes to meet Laura like every other day. Laura seemed scared and was hiding behind a door. Rose tries to comfort Laura. She asks Laura how she is feeling and what she is going through. Laura says that a person with a mask and a weird smiling face keeps stalking her, and except her no one else can see that person. She says it's not a human but a devil disguised as human who is controlling Laura's mind and her life. Laura thinks that whenever the weird guy appears in front of her, she feels like something bad will happen to her. Rose says that Laura could be hallucinating. Then Laura becomes furious and starts telling that it was not a hallucination and it actually happened. Rose asks Laura to look at her face. When Laura sees Rose's face, she sees the weird smile on Rose's face. She falls off her chair and starts having panic attacks. Rose gets scared too and calls someone for help. Rose turns toward Laura and she could see Laura standing in front of her with a wide, weird smile. And Laura takes a sharp piece of broken vase in her hand and slashes her own throat. Even while taking her last breath, Laura had that weird smile on her face. Rose was completely terrified by the incident. She could not believe what she had just witnessed. Rose returns to her home. While changing, she sees a blood spot on her clothes that was Laura's. She takes off her clothes and starts freshening up. She then pours herself a drink, but she feels someone is in her room. It was Rose's fiancé Trevor, but Rose gets startled and drops her glass to the floor. Glass completely shatters and Trevor asks Rose what she was upset about. Rose tells him about Laura's death. Trevor then hugs her. Later during the dinner, they both meet with Laura's sister Holly and her husband Greg. They all were seen talking, but Rose was lost somewhere in her thoughts. Holly invites both of them to her son's 7th birthday party. Rose says she has work and won't be able to attend it. Greg says Rose is underpaid for the amount of time and dedication she gives to her work. She could get better options for her in other places, but Rose loves doing her work, so she doesn't want to quit. Holly tells Rose that they should sell their childhood home, but Rose doesn't agree with it, as the house is filled with their childhood memories. Next day in the hospital, Rose asks the receptionist about the records of Laura and goes through it. She then gets a call from Holly. She picks up the phone and walks towards the window while talking with Holly in the phone. She sees a man who was staring at her. Rose sees Curl was smiling at her and Rose tries to talk with him. Curl starts getting aggressive and says that Rose will die soon. She calls for help and asks them to tie Curl up. But she then sees that Curl was asleep the whole time and she was just hallucinating. After looking at the condition of Rose, the supervisor, Dr. Morgan, decides to give her a paid leave of 1 week. While returning towards her home, Rose stops by a shop to buy a gift for Holly's son. She pours herself a drink after returning to her home. Someone tried to get inside her house, so all the alarms in her house starts beeping and her glass from her hand falls and shatters. She turns off the alarm and she gets a call from the security office. Security officer asks Rose if she is alone at her home. Rose replies yes. The security officer then asks her to turn around and Rose turns pale and is frightened by the statement. She turns around and the phone rang again. Then we got to know that whatever happened before were just hallucinations. This call was from the security office and police arrives at her house. Police checks the entire house and everything seemed fine. Maybe Rose forgot to lock her back door and it was a false alarm. Trevor returns back from his work. Trevor asks what happened, then Rose says she was upset since Laura incident, but now she is fine. Rose tries to feed her cat, but her cat was nowhere to be seen. Rose then listens to the recording of Laura from the last day and she feels like someone attacking her. She then screams and grabs a knife. After listening to Rose scream, Trevor approaches her and he sees that Rose has a knife with her. He gets scared. He then tries to calm her down and tells her that there was no one. After looking at her own mental health, Rose decides to visit a therapist, Dr. Madeline. She tells her everything that was happening with her. Here we get to know that Rose's mom was abusive towards her during her childhood and she killed herself by overdosing herself with medicine. Rose had discovered her mother's body. This was the scene we had seen in the beginning of the movie. She says that she can't forget her mother's last memory and Laura's death. She was getting more anxious while telling these all things to the therapist, so Dr. Madeline decides to start her therapy the next week. Rose then goes to Holly's house for the party. Holly's son starts unwrapping the gift from Rose, then he sees Rose's cat wrapped as the gift. Rose has no idea when she wrapped her cat in place of the gift. Everyone gets scared. Rose starts crying as her pet cat is dead. She tells everyone that she did not do it. She then sees Laura sitting on a chair and was smiling in the weird way. Only Rose was able to see Laura. Rose then falls on a glass table and gets a huge cut on her hand. She then starts screaming from the pain. Holly then takes her to the hospital. Rose sees Trevor and Holly arguing outside and she starts crying. Trevor takes Rose home and she says that she is not insane. She can see and feel the supernatural things, everything that Laura had felt and had told Rose before her death. Trevor doesn't believe her. Trevor says that she is mentally ill and she got this disease from her mother. These incidents were taking a toll on their relationship. Rose starts researching about Laura's Professor Gabriel, who killed himself in front of Laura. She goes to meet Gabriel's wife, Victoria. Victoria says that Gabriel started acting weird before his death. He used to scream in the middle of the night and one day he just disappeared. Later she came to know about her husband's death. She even says that Gabriel had witnessed someone committing suicide in a hotel during one of his conferences. After that he started behaving weirdly. She then shows Rose some sketches drawn by Gabriel. These were the things that Gabriel used to see. She says that Gabriel was not mad and whatever things he felt and saw were actually real. Rose then asks Victoria about the girl whose death Gabriel had witnessed. Victoria thinks Rose is insane, so she gets angry at her and makes Rose leave her house. Rose then goes to meet her ex-boyfriend Joel, who is a police detective, and asks him for his help regarding the suicide case of Professor Gabriel. Then we come to know that Gabriel had seen suicide of a girl named Angelina. They then investigate on Angelina. They listen to an audio recording of Angelina where she mentioned that she too had seen a guy smiling at her while she was driving. Rose then realized that the curse gets passed on through this process. Rose then takes all these information and goes to meet Trevor. Trevor was talking to Madeline. He was just helping himself. He wasn't interested in helping Rose. Rose and Trevor get in a huge fight and Rose leaves Trevor and goes to meet her sister Holly. Holly also did not believe Rose's words. She thinks that Rose was going insane like her mother. Holly too says that she can't help Rose. Rose then gets inside her car and starts crying. Then we see Holly bending her head upside down and asking Rose to help her. Rose then screams, but there was no one outside and only Rose could see it. This all was witnessed by Holly's son. Joel investigates the case and came to know that Robert Talley was in the prison as he killed a complete stranger and was the only person alive who witnessed the murder. Out of 19 victims, no one survived more than 7 days. All of them had a common way of committing the suicide. He tells everything to Rose, and today was her 4th day too. She was scared. Both Rose and Joel goes to meet Tully in the jail. Rose gets to know that the only way to remove the curse from themselves is to murder another human being, and they have to make sure that another person was witnessing the murder, so the curse could get transferred to the one who witnessed it. Rose gets nervous as she can't kill anyone. She then leaves with Joel. She doesn't say anything about it to Joel. We see Dr. Madeline, who was in Rose's house for her therapy. They both were talking, then suddenly Rose gets a call. The call was from Madeline. So the one sitting in front of Rose was not Madeline, so who was it? Then the face of Madeline changes to a devil and it attacks Rose. It says that Rose has less time left to save herself. Rose then takes a knife and goes to her hospital. She takes Carl with her to Dr. Desai's chamber. She then kills Carl by stabbing him with the knife. Then scene shifts to Rose inside her car. She just hallucinated all these while sitting inside her car. Dr. Desai sees Rose inside her car and Rose leaves. Rose came up with a plan. She wants to break the chain of the curse, so she decides to keep herself isolated from everyone. She leaves everything behind and goes to her childhood house. She goes inside her house and she remembers her childhood days. She had found her mother in conscious state and she was telling Rose to call for help. But Rose was only 10 years old and she got scared, so she just left. Then her mother died. Rose then locks herself inside the house. She lights a lantern and she sees the devil with her mother's face. Rose runs from the house, but the devil shows his actual form and strangles her neck. Rose somehow frees herself, then she burns the table with the lantern. She comes out to the house. She thinks that the devil is dead and curse is also over. She tells Joel everything and asks him to live with her. Then Joel starts smiling. We came to know that Rose never left the house. She was just imagining everything. Devil had taken Joel's form. Devil attacks Rose, but Rose rushes outside the house. She sees the real Joel, who had tracked her as he was looking for her. Rose then locks herself inside her house to protect Joel. The devil then shows himself to Rose and enters her body through her mouth. It then possesses her. Joel breaks the lock of the door. He then sees possessed Rose, who lights herself on fire, and now the curse is transferred to Joel. And the movie ends with the focus on Joel's face.